Get up! Now! Officer Reese's voice cut through the plaza like a gunshot, sharp enough to turn heads. His hand was already on her backpack, yanking it violently from beside her. City's not your home. Let's clean up this trash. Beside him, Officer Daniels let out a mocking laugh, nudging the woman's worn shoes with the toe of his boot. Smells like she's been here for weeks. Amara Cole didn't move, didn't beg. She looked up slowly, eyes clear beneath the shadow of a knit beanie. I'm not trespassing, she said, voice calm. This is public space. Reese didn't care. He tore open the backpack and spilled its contents onto the pavement. An old Bible, a cracked phone, a sealed envelope now fluttering toward a puddle. Let's see what you're hiding. People paused, stared. No one intervened. But beneath the blanket draped across her lap, Amara's fingers pressed down on something cold, metal, and federal. A badge, a truth, a trap already set, and they'd just walked straight into it. As we delve into the story, if you believe, everyone should be treated with respect no matter their color or status. Click subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. This story delivers the most powerful instant karma you've never seen coming this year. She hadn't always lived in shadows. Years ago, Amara Cole stood under bright lights at the FBI graduation podium, receiving honors for tactical excellence and psychological precision. She led classified hostage rescue ops, broke open encrypted trafficking rings, and carried a calm that unnerved even her superiors. But her last mission, exposing a captain involved in evidence tampering, made her a threat to the system she served. So they sent her deep undercover, not as punishment, but as strategy. Her new assignment: pose as an unhoused civilian in a precinct known for internal rot and racial misconduct. For 9 months, she lived among the discarded, collecting data, learning names, patterns, behaviors. The coat she wore now wasn't just threadbare, it was armor. The tattered backpack, a mobile evidence vault. The people who overlooked her, they were giving her everything she needed. She didn't chase confrontation. She waited for it. Officer Reese prided himself on being the unshakable face of order. Mid-40s, swaggering with entitlement and always hiding behind mirrored sunglasses, he patrolled downtown like it was his personal turf. He didn't just bend rules, he rewrote them depending on who stood in front of him. His version of law was selective, aggressive toward the voiceless, performative for those with privilege. Daniels, barely into his 30s, followed Reese like a shadow, eager, amused, reckless. What he lacked in experience, he made up for in blind loyalty. Their partnership was a performance of dominance and mockery, especially when it came to women like Amara, black, poor, and defenseless looking. They didn't ask questions, they issued commands. They didn't expect resistance, they demanded obedience. Just that morning, Reese had offered a bottle of water and a free ride to a white college kid who claimed he lost his ID. 10 minutes later, he passed Amara, motionless on the same bench. His tone changed. Move it, he said. You're scaring the tourists. Daniels smirked. No one looked twice. One was seen as lost, the other as a threat. Injustice didn't shout. It whispered through decisions like that. The bench stayed the same, only the skin on it changed. Have you ever felt misjudged before people even knew who you were? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Reese stood with his arms crossed, jaw tight, and sunglasses lowered just enough to make eye contact feel like intimidation. Rules are rules, he muttered as he grabbed the worn backpack beside Amara. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight, the kind that demanded obedience, not understanding. Amara didn't flinch. She watched as he unzipped her belongings, without consent. The irony wasn't lost on her. Just 15 minutes ago, those same officers had allowed 3 teenagers to loiter nearby, smoking and laughing, without a single word exchanged. No warnings, no searches. But now, with her, a lone black woman sitting quietly, they decided the rules mattered again. You shouldn't be here, Daniel said, taking a step closer. This area is restricted to courthouse personnel and, well, people with actual business. His words were coated in condescension. Amara didn't respond with aggression. She didn't raise her voice. She stayed still, her gloved hands folded, her chin slightly raised. "This is public property," she said with quiet clarity. "I'm not doing anything wrong." A few pedestrians paused in their steps. A woman walking her golden retriever slowed, brows furrowed. A man in a charcoal suit stopped mid-sip of his coffee. The air felt different now, tense, expectant. They didn't intervene, but their curiosity grew heavier with every second. Some whispered, "She's probably hiding something." Another muttered, "Why else would they go after her?" Their assumptions arrived before facts did. Her appearance told them everything they needed to believe. She was homeless. She was black. She was quiet. So she must be guilty of something. Reese leaned in. His voice lowered, but his words sharpened. "If you don't get up, we'll book you for resisting. Maybe trespassing. Sound fun?" Daniels chuckled, hand brushing the edge of his taser like it was routine. A young intern by the courthouse gate took a step forward, mouth half open. But when Reese glanced at him, just one cold look, it was enough. The boy dropped his gaze and stepped back. Silence returned. Amara finally raised her head, her eyes locked on Reese's. No fear, no anger, just truth. "Think carefully about what you're doing," she said with conviction so still it shook more than a shout would. Reese laughed. "You threatening me, street rat?" She didn't reply. Not yet. "What would you do if someone challenged you publicly based only on assumption? Drop your response in the comments, and if you think power should never be abused, hit like and subscribe to stand for justice." Reese's patience snapped like a brittle twig. He crouched, gripped Amara's backpack, and with a loud unzip that sliced through the noise of the plaza, dumped the contents onto the pavement. "You were warned," he said, his voice louder now, brimming with performative righteousness. Out spilled the little fragments of a life. Or so it seemed. An old Bible with curled pages. A cracked phone wrapped in rubber bands. A weathered envelope sealed in wax. Reese picked it up, turned it in his hand, and with a smug grin let it fall to the ground like litter. Daniels laughed and stepped on it casually, as if testing how much dignity could be crushed under one boot. Everything around them seemed to freeze. Conversations on nearby benches dissolved. A man in mid-conversation put down his coffee. Even the hiss of the traffic lights softened, as though the city itself held its breath. The spectacle drew attention, deliberate and painful. Amara didn't react. She didn't reach for her things. She didn't yell, cry, or plead. Her voice, when it came, was low and deliberate. "I've done nothing wrong," she said, her eyes meeting Reese's, unblinking. She remained perfectly still, as if rooted deeper than they knew. They saw weakness. What they missed was the storm behind that stillness. Beneath the coat, her fingers brushed over a faint seam, right over the transmitter, embedded into her inner lining. With a light press, the device lit once, then again. A signal shot out, encrypted, immediate, and confirmed. Somewhere far away, a file began to open. Live footage streamed directly to a secure FBI server. Meanwhile, the intern from the courthouse steps paced a few feet away, wrestling between his instincts and his fear. He pulled out his phone and hovered over the screen, thumb trembling above the red record circle. He hesitated, eyes darted toward the officers. Then he sighed and dropped it back into his pocket. Not yet. Two women across the way murmured as they watched. "Why is she just sitting there?" one asked. "Maybe she's hiding something," the other offered. An old man shook his head. They didn't have to go that far. The crowd was split, opinions forming fast, loud, and mostly wrong. Reese reached into the backpack again, pulling out Amara's ID. He waved it toward the crowd, smirking. "Says her name's Amara," he laughed. "Still no address. Go figure. He held it up just high enough to display the front, but not the folded back panel that held her federal clearance. The truth stayed tucked where he didn't bother to look. A woman sitting on the bench nearest leaned over slightly, whispering, "Are you okay?" It was the first voice in the crowd that sounded like care. Amara gave the slightest nod, nothing more. Reese turned toward the woman. "Don't encourage the disruption," he snapped. "She's baiting attention." His tone cracked, not from volume, but from the thin thread of control beginning to fray. Then he turned back to Amara, voice booming now. "This is your final chance. Either leave voluntarily or we take you in. I'm not playing." It was no longer about loitering. This was theatre, and he wanted to win the audience. A man in a golf polo laughed. "Maybe she just wants to sue the city or something," he said with a smirk. People like her know how to play the victim. More voices chimed in. "She's been told to leave. Just go already. We all follow the rules. Why not her?" Daniels pulled out his notepad and stepped forward again. Amara remained silent, still as marble. Then, from the edge of the courtyard, a young woman's voice cut through the static. "Wait, I think I saw a badge." Daniels shot her a glare so sharp it sliced the air. She sank into her seat. Someone pushed a water bottle across the concrete, toward Amara. "If you need support, just say the word," came a whisper. But the person never looked up, only slid away like fog. Reese snorted. "This isn't a debate." Then, as if to underline his power, he bent down, picked up the sealed envelope, and flung it across the sidewalk into a small puddle. Oops. 2 more officers arrived, casually laughing and handing out snacks to courthouse staff. Reese took a granola bar and started handing them out. He skipped over Amara entirely. "Take care of the real people," he muttered. But what he didn't know was, every second of this was already saved, time-stamped, streamed, and justice, it was closer than he could imagine. Would you stay calm or speak out when the world turns silent around you? Comment below. If this chapter made your heart race, hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who knows what quiet strength looks like. Amara leaned forward slowly, reaching toward the envelope that now lay soaked and sagging in the shallow puddle. But before her fingers could graze it, Reese stepped in and kicked it farther down the sidewalk. His boot made a wet slap as it struck paper. Then, without hesitation, he turned and bumped his shoulder into hers, shoving her, off balance on the bench. She caught herself with one hand and looked up. "Watch where you're crawling, sweetheart," he sneered. Daniels laughed behind him like it was all part of the performance. "Next time, watch where you're standing," Reese said louder now, addressing the crowd that had begun to form again. He lifted his hands in mock innocence. "She's being uncooperative. That's on her, not us." Amara straightened her back without wiping the dirt from her coat. Her voice came out slow, composed, steady. "I've only asked for equal treatment." The sentence hung in the air like a weight. A few murmurs rose. Someone shifted uncomfortably. Reese's eyes flicked with something sharper. Uncertainty. "You know what?" he barked, stepping forward. He grabbed the front of Amara's coat, bunching the fabric in his fists. Not enough for arrest, just enough to rattle. But she didn't rattle. Daniels looked around now, noticing the silence creeping back. "You think you can challenge authority in this city?" Reese growled. A gasp shot through the air. A bystander stood up. Another raised their phone. The intern from the courthouse finally pressed record. The moment had shifted. The crowd knew it. So did Reese. Amara met his eyes. "You just made a mistake you'll regret." When someone stays calm under pressure, do you think it's weakness or strategy? Comment with your take. Amara rose slowly from the bench, not in defiance, not in panic, but in silent declaration. Her movements were deliberate, her spine straightening with unspoken authority. She looked Reese in the eye. The kind of look that didn't scream or plead, just held. "I've tolerated enough," she said, her voice smooth and low, like a calm storm rolling in. It wasn't loud, it didn't need to be. It was a line drawn with the kind of restraint only someone with real power could afford. Reese's smirk faltered. He scoffed, folding his arms to recover control. "You're the one causing issues. If you'd just moved along, none of this would have happened." He glanced at Daniels for backup, but the young officer's posture had changed. His face had lost its grin. His hands hung awkwardly at his sides, unsure whether to stay part of this or step away from it. Something had shifted. It wasn't just Amara's stance. It was the air around her. Her coat, while still worn, suddenly looked less like rags and more like concealment. Her poise didn't match the profile Reese had built in his head. And her eyes, they were no longer reacting. They were calculating. For the first time since the encounter began, Reese felt like he wasn't the one in charge. Across the street, a man in plain clothes paused beside a vending cart. He raised a phone to his ear and spoke calmly. "Activation confirmed. Live. Stream holding. Subject has signaled." He didn't look like a cop, didn't wear a badge, but the way he watched, fixed, focused, made it clear he wasn't just another bystander. He was backup. Quiet, strategic, and very real. Reese caught the slight glance Amara had given in the man's direction. "Who did you just look at?" he barked, stepping closer. "You signaling someone?" He tried to sound confident, but something in his voice had cracked. Daniels glanced between the two of them, the first hints of doubt forming in his eyes. The intern who had hesitated earlier circled near Amara. As he passed, he whispered quickly, "Need anything?" Amara didn't look at him. "Keep recording," she murmured, just loud enough to be caught by a mic. The intern nodded and tapped the red button again. She turned to face the growing crowd. Her voice was calm, but commanding now. "This isn't about policy," she said, clearly. "This is about respect." And in that moment, the crowd, once passive, began to lean in. Not just physically, ethically. The tension wasn't about a loitering violation anymore. It was about dignity. Reese didn't hear the audio click on inside Amara's jacket, didn't notice the tiny light blink green near the inner seam. He leaned closer to Daniels and muttered, "Some people just don't deserve it. Let her make a scene. It's what they do." His words were caught, clean and crisp, by the hidden mic, streaming live. Daniels looked startled, his mouth opened like he wanted to stop him, but he didn't. He stayed quiet. Again. Now the courtyard was nearly silent. Phones were up. People had stopped pretending not to care. A few shook their heads. One woman looked visibly upset. Even those who had doubted Amara earlier were beginning to realize they were watching something dangerous, something wrong. Amara bent down slowly and retrieved the envelope Reese had flung into the puddle. It was soaked and slightly torn, but she held it with care. She straightened, looked Reese in the eye again, and spoke softly. "You're right about one thing," she said. "Actions do have consequences." And this time, it wasn't just Reese who heard her. Everyone did. When someone stays calm under pressure, do you think it's weakness or strategy? Comment with your take. The courtyard went still. The breeze paused. The fountain behind the benches whispered a softer stream. Not a single voice dared rise. People stopped mid-breath, phones suspended in the air. It was the kind of silence that didn't ask for attention. It commanded it. Amara moved slowly, deliberately. She reached inside her coat and placed a black phone, face up, on the bench beside her. Its screen blinked red. Live. Recording. Streaming. No speech. No warning. Just presence. Reese flinched. His voice rose, unsteady. "What exactly are you doing?" The power in his tone was gone. Daniel stepped back, unsure now. Of her, Of this. Amara never blinked. You'll understand soon enough, she said softly. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. If you felt the energy shift in this scene, hit like. And don't forget to subscribe if you believe silence can be stronger than shouting. She's not just some random woman, someone whispered near the crowd's edge. The voice was quiet, uncertain, but laced with dawning realization. Did you see that phone? She's been documenting everything. Heads turned, eyes narrowed, and for the first time, the crowd looked at Amara differently. Not as a vagrant, but as someone with a purpose, a force. The intern who had been filming from the beginning leaned into a bystander. She's been building a case, he whispered. This whole time, she's been waiting for them to cross a line. The weight of his words hung in the air. This wasn't just confrontation, it was revelation. And this time, no one laughed. Then came the sound, a low, coordinated hum of engines. 3 black SUVs rolled into the plaza and halted with precision. Doors opened. From the lead vehicle, a woman in a tailored FBI jacket stepped out, flanked by 2 agents in plain clothes. They didn't scan the crowd. They didn't hesitate. They walked directly toward Amara. For those recording, the lead agent said, clearly turning toward the crowd, you may want to keep filming. You're witnessing an active federal operation. Gasps swept through the air like a wave. Phones shot higher, eyes widened. Even those who had mocked her seconds earlier stood, frozen in disbelief. I knew something was off, someone said aloud. That woman, she was never afraid, not once. The murmurs turned to nods. The tide was turning fast. Amara reached into her coat. Not rushed, not theatrical, just firm. From an inner pocket, she pulled out a badge, gold, clean, and unmistakable. It caught the sunlight like a blade. Agent Amara Cole, FBI, she announced, embedded in this district for a corruption investigation, undercover. She paused, allowing the shock to settle. You just made this very easy. Reese's face drained of color. He stepped back, half a foot, his mouth open but useless. You're FBI? The words stumbled out like glass underfoot. He looked at Daniels, but the younger officer only stared at the ground now. The lead agent turned to the 2 uniformed officers arriving behind her. We're pausing precinct operations effective immediately. Seize all body cam logs. Suspend patrol activity in this zone. Now. The officers moved quickly. No hesitation this time. They knew better. Amara didn't smile, didn't gloat. She simply nodded and sat back down, her hands folded, letting the weight of the moment fall on everyone else. The silence was deafening, this time not from fear, but from reckoning. 2 officials from the Department of Justice emerged from a second SUV, tablets in hand. One spoke to the agents on scene. All field documentation from today has been received. Chain of evidence secure. Confirmed live recordings on encrypted server. The second nodded and pointed to Reese. Amara rose again, slowly, and faced Reese fully now. Her voice didn't need volume. It carried on clarity alone. You chose to lead with ego. That ends today. From the back of the crowd, a single clap broke the silence, then another. Within seconds, the applause rippled forward. Not wild, but purposeful, measured. Daniels didn't join. He stared at the cement like it could save him from consequence. You made assumptions based on appearance, Amara said, scanning the crowd now. You abused power because you thought you could. Now the world sees what that looks like. Reese turned. But no one met his eyes. Not Daniels, not the courthouse, staff, not even the officers he once outranked. One by one, they shifted away from him. He stood alone in the middle of a circle he'd drawn himself. Suddenly, Reese stepped toward the sidewalk. I'm going to call my lawyer, he muttered, louder now. This is all a misunderstanding. But he never made it far. Please remain where you are, a DOJ agent said, stepping calmly into his path. Misunderstandings don't include theft, abuse, and falsified reports. You're suspended, the FBI lead said firmly. Effective immediately. Badge, gun, now. Reese hesitated, then reached slowly into his holster and handed it over. No words, just surrender. You'll be cooperating with federal prosecution teams, added the second agent. Your cases, your arrests, your reports, they're under review. And you're not walking away from this. The message was clear. No shield, no uniform, no escape. Reese's voice cracked as he looked for a lifeline. This wasn't personal, he tried to say. It wasn't supposed to be like this, but the words landed flat. Amara didn't blink. It became personal the moment you made it public. Her voice held no hate, only truth. A final, irreversible truth. She turned to the crowd. To everyone who was affected or made uncomfortable by what you saw today, thank you for watching. For not walking away. A few nodded. Some looked down, ashamed. Others, inspired. As she passed the intern, she paused briefly and gave him a nod. We saw you. Your integrity mattered. He blinked rapidly, emotion creeping across his face. This moment wouldn't just stay with him, it would shape him. Amara bent down and gathered her few belongings. Same cracked phone, same soggy envelope. But this time, her hands moved with the quiet power of someone no longer unseen. She stepped between the parted crowd, escorted not by force, but by respect. She wasn't alone anymore. She never really had been. The woman they thought was powerless had been recording their power all along. Should people who abuse their power be forgiven, or should they face the full consequences? Drop your take in the comments, and if this story hit you, like and subscribe for more high-stakes moments like this. The plaza was nearly empty by nightfall. Federal vehicles were gone, the sidewalks scrubbed clean of the chaos that had exploded just hours earlier. But near the bench where it all began, a teenage girl lingered. She stood still, arms folded tightly, eyes locked on the spot where a woman had once been treated like she didn't belong. She waited, unsure why, until she saw Amara return, quietly, without a badge, just to retrieve her water bottle. "Excuse me," the girl said, almost afraid her voice might break the moment. Amara looked up, calm as ever. I didn't know people like you existed." There was no performance in her tone, just awe. Amara paused, smiled gently. "You do now," she said, "and one day, people like you will lead." That night, the internet didn't sleep. Clips of the confrontation spread like fire, on TikTok, on Twitter, on YouTube. Headlines read, "Undercover FBI agent exposes corrupt cops in broad daylight." Thousands of comments rolled in. "That's what quiet strength looks like. This is the best instant karma I've ever seen. I'll never judge someone again based on how they look." The world had watched a woman stripped of everything but her dignity, and that was the only thing she needed to win. Later, that week, the FBI issued a short press release. It quoted Agent Amara Cole in just 3 lines. "Respect shouldn't be conditional. Everyone deserves it, regardless of assumptions." She declined interviews. No press tour, no profile pieces. Her work wasn't about spotlight, it was about exposure.